If you had the chance, what would you ask an interdimensional collective of beings here to help us on planet Earth? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guests are Sheila and Marcus Gillette and Theo, an angelic collective here to help us. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio here in Southern California and Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, today we're going to talk about channeling. We're going to talk about a collective, angelic collective called Theo, and we're also going to talk about relationships and soul integration, all here on Guys Radio. I've got two wonderful guests, Marcus and Sheila Gillette. They have a new book out. It's called The Art of Relationships, and it's really all about what's going on today and why relationships have been a focus. With the awakening of humanity and this ascension process that seems to be going on. Obviously, there's relationships with ourselves, with other people, and with humanity as a whole. We're going to get into all of that. Let me tell you a little bit about Marcus and Sheila. Over the past 25 years, they've empowered and educated thousands worldwide through intimate conversations with a collective called Theo. Sheila's been a direct voice medium for Theo, a collective of 12 archangels, since her near-death experience in 1969. With Marcus, Sheila shares Theo's wisdom worldwide with messages that foster an enlightenment state of consciousness. Before they met, they were on their own spiritual paths. As soon as they met, they kind of made a connection. Marcus had read Sheila's book, The Fifth Dimension, Channels of a New Reality. He was kind of led to meeting Sheila, and then they've just gone on, and they're doing great work. I've seen them on Gaia. I read their wonderful new book, The Art of Relationships. I've seen their website, Ask Theo, and I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation. So welcome to Guys Radio, Sheila and Marcus Gillette, and of course, Theo, who hopefully will join us today. Thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
It's our pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, let's start at the beginning because some of my audience may not be too familiar with you two yet, and I want them to be familiar with you. So let's start with Sheila. Your story, you had a near-death experience way back in 1969 that connected you with Theo, and you are are you a psychic medium also, besides being a trance channeler?
I am. I've been tested for that, but I am a trance medium. That's what I was told I was by the scientists that I was tested by and worked with early on in doing this work. But I think we all are psychic. We may call it something else, but we all have intuitive gifts. And I recognize that there were a little bit of that in me growing up, but not to the extent that happened after my near-death experience, where I tranced spontaneously and became a direct voice trance medium, and the sharing of Theo throughout the world. And so I've been doing this 5 decades. It's been an interesting process of watching the waves of awakening that's happened to people. When I started, this wasn't spoken about openly. I didn't go into public arenas and go, guess what I can do? It was something that's evolved over these decades that I've been doing the work. And I've had many clients that have gone on to do much good work in the world, much like Esther Hicks. Many of your listeners may know of her and Abraham. And she and Jerry, her husband, were clients of mine. And they went on to do some great works, and she continues. And so I like to note that I've been a little bit of part of that awakening, but Theo's been a teacher to many.
Okay. So were you, though, practicing psychic, if you will, prior to your near-death experience and connection with Theo? No. Okay.
No, not at all.
That all blossomed from your NDE, right?
Yes, and it happened after the birth of my youngest daughter. I had 2 little kids at home and a brand new baby, and I said, hey, God, give me a job. I'll do anything. And this is the job I got.
Okay, so real quick, so what exactly happened for the benefit of our listeners and viewers? So you were average, everyday, regular person, and then you had this near-death experience. What happened? How did you connect with Theo? How did you react to that? How did you know like what's going on? And then we'll introduce Marcus and your connection there.
Okay. I was in intensive care. I had pulmonary embolus and I couldn't breathe. My lungs were full of fluid. My family was being prepared for my imminent death. And I just kept saying, God, give me a job. And Jesus appeared at the end of my bed. So I believe it's called a near-death experience. And there's a criteria of about 12 things that one experiences in that process. Not everybody has all 12 of them, but I believe I had a miraculous healing. And then 6 months after I was out of the hospital, I was in the hospital for a month after I gained some strength and I could hold the energy. I started having all kinds of psychic phenomena happening to me internally, externally. And I could do automatic writing. I could hear Jesus spoke to me in that hospital room. And my inner mind hearing, as we hear our own thoughts, I heard a distinct male voice say to me, remember you are loved. And so I had those experiences clairaudiently of hearing messages. I could do automatic writing, and then I spontaneously, and this direct voice was speaking through me, giving information to individuals about their lives that I couldn't possibly have known, and then about the world in general and what was happening. So it was quite an interesting experience for a young mother to have all this happening at once.
How did you feel about that when it was happening? Were you questioning? Were you saying, God, I asked for a job, I didn't ask for this, or is this my job? Or were you afraid? Were you a spiritual person prior to this, or were you religious, or how did you take all of this?
Religious, spiritual, yes. And so I was open. And my family believed in reincarnation. My mother and aunts and my grandmother used to joke about being reincarnated, from being queens to maids and things like that, which was just kind of a joke. But there was belief in that. And so I had a belief in a possibility. And I had some prophetic dreams when I was younger, but I had nothing to compare to what was happening to me. Things I could not have known about. Also, when the angels wanted to speak to me, I would be sitting in the chair and the chair would physically move. I had physical phenomena happening. My bed levitated in the middle of the night. There were things that spirit, the angels wanted me to know that this wasn't something I was making up. And what kept me going is that I asked for this. And I knew I was protected. That place in us where there's such a strong knowing and no doubtedness, even though all these unusual things were happening, I was being taught and told by the angels of how to work with it, because I didn't have any mentors. The only thing that I found was an Edgar Cayce book. And I thought, oh, this guy's doing what's happening to me, because I was laying down flat and this voice was speaking through me. And so I was guided to this book, as many of your listeners, and you may have even been guided to certain books, or they just fell on you in the bookstore or something. Yep. Read this now. And so truly the angels mentored me. I didn't have a mentor to say, this is okay. And then scientists found out about me, and I do not know how. I think they were guided and invited me to a conference of psychics and scientists that was at the University of Florida put on. And I met scientists that were researching parapsychology and metaphysics, and invited me to be tested, which I was, which at that point in time, this was in the early 70s and
Wow.
80s that it gave me the good housekeeping seal of approval. You're not a crazy person, you're psychic. So that's kind of a quick story of the lineage of 5 decades.
So how did Theo show up for you, and what does the name Theo mean?
So Theo showed up and spoke. The original spokesman was Orlos, was with me for a couple of years and kept telling me they were working on my body to be able to receive higher teachers vibrationally. And when Theo came in, they said, we are 12 archangels. We will not identify individually. We're to be known collectively by the name Theo. And they instructed me to look that up in the dictionary, which I did. And the dictionary definition of Theo is the beginning or God. So they're messengers from source, God, however, force, whatever we want to hold in our minds about that. And they were very loud. Orlos was very soft-spoken. They were so loud, it shocked the people in the room when they came in. And so they've softened over the years because they didn't want to shock us.
Now, as a collective, do you sense, working with Theo, that different voices are stepping forward, or is it always just an aggregation of the 12? Is it always the same 12? Is it like maybe number 11 steps forward, or is there any type of movement there that you sense?
That's a great question, because I can notice a difference energetically. The voice sounds very much the same as one spokesman or vibration, but subtly I can notice the vocabulary might be different. But there's a consistency. And if I've listened back to recordings, back to back of different recordings, I can tell a slight difference, but energetically, I can feel a shift.
Okay. Guys Radio, my special guests are Sheila and Marcus Gillette. We're talking about their new book, The Art of Relationships. We're talking about Theo, soul integration, and so much more. Let's get to you, Marcus. You were a business guy, and you were guided somehow to hand your business card over to a lady in the supermarket, I believe, and she ended up getting in touch with you and giving you a copy of one of Sheila's books. And the next thing you know, you two got together, and here you are 25 years later on Guys Radio. That's the short story.
That is precisely what happened, Robert. I mean, that's it. I got guided. Met a woman literally in a grocery store. I didn't even meet her. Actually, we just kind of gave a glance, said hi, and I got out in my car, and there was this voice, and you know the voice I'm talking about, saying, go give her your business card. And I argued with the voice. I said, there's no reason for that. There's literally no reason to go do that. And I finally quit arguing, went and gave her my card, and it turned out that she was a Sheila. She had just moved to Scottsdale. And within a matter of a couple of weeks, she gave me Sheila's first book, The Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality, which was a game changer for me. You know, like Sheila was talking about how those books fall off the shelves that we need to read at that particular point in our journey. And this book blew me away. It was so precisely what I needed to read and to understand at that point in my journey. And so about 2 years later, Sheila came to town. And as you read in the book, we had a very great opportunity to get together and meet each other, and really connected at a deep level pretty much right off the bat. And here we are 25 years later.
That's so awesome. I love it. Let's talk about this book, The Art of Relationships. It's in some ways, when I was watching you folks on Guy, I was like, oh, with the relationship thing, people, some of the information is people understand that relationships have changed, women's role, long overdue recognition. Guys, special place for guys now, because, this is a time where it's probably the best time ever to be a guy, because they can be whoever they want to be. Yet it's also a time where it's less clear who men really are. And I thought some of the themes there, well, what is the relationship really all about? And then I read the book and I said, I get it, because a lot of the relationships that we have, whether it's with humanity, with our partner, with God, but also most importantly with ourselves. So what drew you, inspired you, and directed you to craft this book?
Well, it started with a question, Robert,
Yeah.
and the question was, Theo, what would you, 3+ years ago, Theo, what would you like us to focus on? What aspect of your teachings can have the greatest impact on humanity? And it was there was no, it was an immediate response: relationships. And you hit it right on the head, Robert. It's all about the relationship to the self. And you'd mentioned the soul integration process earlier in your introduction. And there's a process, a spiritual, simple spiritual process that Theo teaches about, really, and just to give you a very short version of it, it's just simply
Please.
to operate on the premise that any thoughts or beliefs that we hold about ourselves that are anything other than unconditionally loving are not true. And when we begin to understand that, and we begin to do some exploration, some self-discovery through meditation, to identify the core circumstances in which untrue beliefs about ourselves were initially created and adopted, and we have that awareness, everything starts to shift in our lives. We become so empowered. Limiting beliefs become empowered beliefs. Fear, resistance, lack of trust, lack of worth shifts completely through this process, and it can happen fairly quickly. And ultimately, it just moves us into a place of self-love, and that's what you were talking about. And the core of Theo's teachings are at their core are that we are moving into a vibration of a state of being of unconditional love, and there's just magic and miracles, isn't there, Sheila? In that vibration, that's where all the magic takes place.
Well, too, if you think of everything's relational. We don't do anything that doesn't have connection to others. Our work, our families, our primary relationships, our children, all of our lives are, everything's relationship oriented. And the soul integrational process takes us from being reactive in life emotionally to beliefs of not feeling good enough, into being more responsive when we change the perceptions of our situations, circumstances in which those conditions had us create or adopt a belief of not being good enough. And so when we can change the perception of those events don't change their history, but we can change the perception of how it made us the strong person we are today. What kind of tools, what kind of gifts do we have? And when we change perceptions, like the thermostat in our house, if we change our thermostat, it changes our environment, doesn't it? Well, changing our belief system changes the trajectory of our life to having a greater life well lived, rather than blocking ourselves from that.
Would this be similar, Sheila, to you raise your vibration and then you're at a level where some of the lower stuff doesn't impact you, the fear drops off, and then that's really the awakening. It's not like, oh, something specific is going to happen, but individually, when we and collectively raise the frequency, then we're in a different level where we experience life, if you will, in a different way, from a higher level. I put that in quotes because we're not pulled down. It seems like the real enemy is fear, and fear begets more fear. Is that really what this Great Awakening is all about?
Well, what we're doing is we're changing our default system from fright, flight, fear-based thinking into positive and movement and creative thought into creating that life. Thoreau spoke about it as walking through an invisible barrier. Well, that's what we're doing. We're changing that thermostat. Even just a little bit changes all the things that our soul draws to us. We're always going to have challenge, because that's curriculum of life. It's how we deal with it that changes.
Got it.
Which is what you're speaking about.
Would this be a good time? Could we bring, just checking the clock, bring Theo on and we can continue on this conversation?
Sure, it takes just a moment.
Sure. Okay, Sheila's going to bring Theo in. So we'll keep it quiet for a moment here.
It is the beginning, is it not?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, Theo. Thank you for being with us here on my show. I'm very appreciative, and I welcome you.
We are appreciative of the opportunity to be of service to you.
So,
You may ask.
having had the privilege of speaking to different collectives, and even on my show, I always find it very interesting that there's these different collectives around it with all these positive messages. Is there any intercommunication between the different collectives that certain individuals like a Sheila or a Paul Selig or other people are in contact with? Do you have any communication with each other?
We have an awareness energetically of the other. Yes.
That's interesting. How would you define for our listeners and viewers for the first time or may not be aware of who you are, Theo? How would you define yourselves for them?
We are 12 archangelic beings, for lack of a better human term, that are here as teachers, mentors, direct from source to assist the consciousness shift that is happening on this planet now, that has never before happened. The veils between your multidimensionality are very thin. The fifth dimensionary energy frequencies allowing you to recognize the magnificence of your souls and that you're more than your physical structure.
You know, it's interesting, Theo, that, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there's awakening and ascension going on now. And I think humans take it in different ways. One is they think there's concrete, specific things that are going to happen, like, oh, everything's going to flip over and everybody's going to start from scratch, versus a kind of an evolution of things. So my first question would be, how should humans see this awakening process, and what actually is this awakening process in terms of what the expectation should be for human beings right now? And why is this happening now?
It's time for things to change on this planet. Many in religious circles talks about it as being revelatory or revelations, but it's not the end of your planet. It's the end of the old foundational structures that no longer work. And it comes on the inner of each individual human being, a change of thinking and belief systems that allow the changes externally. For your world, your life, the chaos that is happening now is just a reflection on the inner of the human species. But as you come into a cohesiveness in a collective way, individualistically, and then collectively in a higher vibrational frequency, these changes occur. And you're witnessing now these changes, but out of this chaos will come order for the highest good of the human species and all species on this planet. You are a global species. You're not segregated and segmented. We see no demarcation lines in your world other than water. So you're recognizing this in this time. You're communicating globally. And as you do this, you see that you're more than the same than you are different.
It seems like from what you're saying, and forgive me for I'm just going to do my best to interpret it, that the individual needs to work on themselves first, raise their frequency, and then as people experience the planet on a collective agreement basis, things can change more rapidly. But it has to start with the individual, and then we have to then, as a collective species, raise the vibration, because it seems like what's happening right now, as you mentioned, is a reflection of the inner chaos that we have collectively as a species. Is that accurate, Theo?
Yes, and the old structures of belief of not being worthy, that is changing. Those generational patterns that have been passed along for thousands of years no longer work. And what you recognize as this integrative process occurs within the individuals, then it's by the people all these changes occur.
So what can an individual, each of us, do to be part of the solution and be part of the change? I mean, does it begin with self-reflection, meditation, realizing that God, as you have described in what I've read, is unconditional love. And therefore, if God is unconditional love and we come from God, then we have aspects of unconditional love within us that we need to learn how to tap through spiritual unfoldment work. Is that am I on the right track there?
Correct. Yes. And what we speak of it as is integrating the fragmented aspects of the soul that hold the beliefs that you're not worthy, not lovable, all those old patternings. And as you rewrite that script, change those beliefs, support these aspects of self with love, that then new scripts of unconditional comes forward. And unconditional love is a state of being. It's not a feeling, but it's a solid state of peace on the inner, being comfortable in your skin, knowing that you're more powerful than you think you are, and that you are a magnificent creative energy that has chosen a human experience.
It seems like, Theo, there is almost an attack of fear on us more than ever. The fear dials seem to be way up, whether it's from the media, whether it's from behavior of certain leaders around the world, and a lot of misinformation and quote unquote fake news. And it's really difficult for people to really understand what's going on, except to me, by going within. When we go within, it seems like we're closer to the truth there, because we can connect with source by going inside instead of trying to react and to what's going on exterior, on an exterior sense, instead of just witnessing and responding to that. I mean, help me out here in terms of articulating this for our listeners.
You are correct. Your higher power knows. So we encourage each and every one to go on the inner. You all have a truth barometer in you. You have evidence in your life. When spoken the truth or speaking the truth, you have a visceral experience in your body about that. Pay attention to that. If someone is speaking to you, you can ask on the inner, is this true? You know truth. It's just your intellectual mind that has the struggle. So pay attention to what your body tells you and what your soul or higher power speaks to you.
Concerning the higher power, higher self, if you will, that we all have. I mean, in my meditations, I've been spending a little time and asking my higher self, I want to have a closer relationship with you, and I want your guidance, and I want you to be more of a part of me. And I find myself wrestling with what exactly is the higher self. Is it the all-encompassing soul of who I am, or is it an oversoul that's connected to everybody else's soul, or is it both?
It's both, because you're not disconnected, but your higher power or your oversoul is the sum total of all your multidimensional experiences and energy. So your soul is much larger than this physical container, and you can feel that. If you were to stretch your arms straight out from your shoulders, you could feel the energy of the walls. You can feel the expansiveness of that energy, can you not?
Of course.
That tells you your energy field, your soul field, is bigger than this body. Many speak of their personal space. If someone steps up to you and gets in your personal space, you step back, don't you? It feels like an intrusion into your soul energy. So knowing you're more than this physical structure, you're a soul having a human experience. It's not the other way around. They're a human having a spiritual experience. That's backwards. So when you begin to understand that, and you have experiences of changing those perceptions, you will have a peace or a feeling of love that you may not have experienced before, and that radiates out from you as responding to life rather than reacting from the emotional body and belief systems that of the past.
Mhm. Let's talk a little bit, if it's okay, about relationships, because the book is about relationships, and you have directed Sheila and Marcus into this area. I found one of the most interesting aspects of it when you talk about people not having self-worth, that when they break up in a relationship, now sometimes relationships don't work out, that doesn't have to diminish that you may have had some great times and great experiences in a relationship. I remember I was with somebody for about 8 years, and we broke up, and I was sad, but I said, I put a book together of photos and stuff and said, thank you. And I didn't see it as a loss. I saw it as, okay, we're moving on now, but we had great times. Whereas my partner at the time, I believe, I could be wrong, thought it was like, well, it's a failure because it didn't work. And I think a lot of people look at relationships that don't work out as failures instead of the successes they are, because there's so many people, and we're going to meet a lot of people during our time here in this incarnation. Could you elaborate on that, please, Theo?
So your perception is correct, but most people degrade themselves. To your point of your previous relationship partner, thinking they failed in some way. No, there was no failure here. There was learning, there was love. Relationships don't end, they live inside of you. And they can complete harmoniously, and that's what beings can learn about. But in most times, humans have been not wanting to feel uncomfortable and self-righteous and justified at ending relationships by blaming and making the other wrong. Wrong for what? For participation, for being there, for expectations that have gone unmet for them that they subconsciously have not even known. So expecting another person to heal them, and that's an impossibility. One must look within and do that for themselves. And in doing such, it can be revelatory in a new relationship, for there won't be an acting out of those old patterns of the past.
This is kind of a random question, but I want to ask that. My wife asked me to ask this question. I think it's actually a good one. Since you are observing us, Theo, and you have not been in the human form, and one of the relationship issues that humans wrestle with all the time is monogamy. I'm wondering if monogamy is the norm throughout the universe, or is this something that's been kind of put on top of humanity and been something that we've struggled with and may not be even what's natural for us? I think, to me, it's more about trust and honesty versus strictly monogamy in a relationship.
That's used as a club against each other, isn't it?
Yes.
But you're correct in knowing that it's trust. And trust should not be freely given, it should be earned. And so when you say with someone, I'm loving them, then you build a trust through that. Yes.
Yes.
And it's evidenced in human cultures as it has evolved that monogamy, there were many cultures in which males had many brides or wives. Yes.
Yes.
Had to do survival. And so we would say, no, monogamy was not a preset mindset, but it's evolved in the sense of commitment to each other, to trust. And betrayal is a tremendous experience, undermines one's belief in self.
Now, you've mentioned, Theo, that betrayal, when you betray somebody, you're also actually betraying yourself. Could you elaborate on that?
Correct. Of course you are. Because you're undermining that trust.
Mm,
Yes.
yes.
And when one does that, they can't feel good about themselves.
True. When let's talk a little bit about men and women. Right now in our culture, women are finally getting long overdue recognition. They're on a pretty straight path of achievement, and it's great. And as I mentioned to Sheila and Marcus, and I've said in many of my broadcasts, I work on a kind of a male-oriented brand. This has never been a better time to be a man. And because this is a time where men can be whoever they want to be, yet it's also a time where it's never been less clear for many who men really are. Could you talk to us a little bit about the changing, the shifting roles of men and women and the perceptions of them, and what can men do better to deal with these changes? Because a lot of guys have shut down or they become angry, and they don't like the changes that are going on. I see them as very liberating, but many men are like, they're angry now. And it's not a good thing. And just help us out with that, please.
So this is all part of the change of consciousness that we're speaking about. For your humans, the delineation between male and female, what there is a recognition, women have been angry, men have been angry. It's not an us and them kind of culture anymore. It's a celebration of your individuality, but also what you bring to each other. You're both important in this human species experiment, if you would, and that should be celebrated. It's not a power struggle, and that's what humans are coming out of in many areas, not just between men and women, but in countries and self-righteousness and all the things of old paradigms and belief systems that have been passed along for centuries. Now is a time of this change and celebration of the species itself, and that you all have qualities that complement each other. And so the old paradigms, the old belief systems are more stuck in older humans than younger. For those coming in now and integrating into this human species are aware of a new paradigm that's evolving now and are ready for it. But the ones that are angry have been holding on to the past, the old ways of being. And that's difficult to change, but it changes on the inner just like everything else. It's the integrative process that we speak about that can assist everyone, male and female.
Now, you mentioned in what I read that people can, in different incarnations, can carry along skill sets and interests from one lifetime, if you will, to another. A lot of people nowadays are wondering, what is my life's purpose? What is my path? What should I be doing? What would you say to people who are on this path? Can people access what they were in other lifetimes in a good way and say, oh, I have this proclivity for this or that, or to just accept, like, I have this talent and I want to pursue it? Or is there things that people need to do to be able to be more able to find out what their life's purpose is? Forgive me for not being that articulate with that question.
Well, life's purpose is life. That's on purpose. You've chosen a human existence, human body. What you're talking about is passion, how to express the energy of life passionately. And so each and every one of you do carry over information of other experience, your multidimensional selves. It can explain humans or human lives, like Mozart, who could compose songs at 4 years old. He had done that before. He's a musician, an artisan, artists that paint beautiful pictures at a very young age. they carry forward that expertise. There are souls that have those qualities, if you would, that become much more refined and defined in the sense of that awareness. So what lights you up in life? What would you do if you weren't paid? What excites you if you speak about it? Do you get enthusiastic? You all know what drives you, what interests you, but many think they can't have an income from that, or they can't live, that they're being told that they must be one way rather than pursuing that dream or that expression fully. And that's simply untrue, isn't it?
Mhm.
Many have success in expression of their gifts.
You also mentioned the time, we see time, humans, as in a linear fashion. And that time is everything is happening at the same time. There is no time in the concept that we have collectively agreed to. If that's the case, and I'm not trying to be clever or throw you a curveball question here, but so if that's the case, just to help people kind of process this, if you pass over and you've stated that you do meet energetic forms of your relatives there, theoretically, if I passed over tomorrow, would I meet my son who was 9 years old on the other side?
Yes, you could. Yes.
Okay.
Energy is constant. It's only form that changes. And so what you're thinking about is your physical existence.
Okay.
And know that that's just the vehicle. Your earth suit is the vehicle that you utilize, your soul enters into, but your energy is constant, it's eternal. And so love exists as a key element energetically between you and your son, your mate, your partner, your family. So yes, that continues to exist.
I understand. Okay, we're speaking with Theo and Sheila and Marcus Gillette. The new book is called The Art of Relationship. Theo, what would be two more questions? What do people need to know right now? What's the best advice you would give to people traversing all this calamity this chaos going on now under the umbrella of this is really good and this is part of the Great Awakening? You just got to get through this. What would be your advice for people? Because a lot of people are like, oh my God, what's next? They're afraid.
Stay present in your life. Perfect presence, actually. For most, get in the oh my God fear perspective of what if something horrible is going to happen. But fear and faith ask the same of you, is to believe in something unseen. So what if something wonderful is going to happen? Flip it. You're laying new neural pathways in your brain from fright, flight, fear, default systems into better creativity and peace. So flip it. What if something wonderful is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And you continue to flip those thoughts. You're laying new neural pathways to where your default system would be positive and creative rather than fear-based.
I love it. Last question, and this is a personal one. So for myself, I'm sure all of this relates to me, and you mentioned some things during our conversation that certainly do relate to me in terms of making a living at this. But what do I need to know right now, Theo?
Being a teacher is your passion, isn't it? Changing yes. minds, and that will bring you success. So be creative as you've been and will continue to be, and an informant of a new way of being. Through your own personal experience, share your story, but also stories of others.
I love it. Thank you so much, Theo. Thank you for gracing us on Guys Radio. You've been super helpful, and I really enjoyed this. And thank you so much. God bless.
God's love unto you. Good day.
Good day. Okay, while Sheila returns, now Marcus is from your experience, this what we just experienced together, is this typical of a channeling Sheila through Theo through Sheila rather?
I believe it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I would applaud you. Those are great questions. I think there's a lot of great information that helps to understand a little bit more about this time that we're living in right now, Robert. And Theo's messages are messages of hope and inspiration and possibility. And I think we heard quite a bit of that in this channeling for sure. Welcome back, Sheila.
Welcome,
Hi,
Sheila.
Marcus.
And
Hi,
thank
Robert.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Are you present when this channeling comes through? Do you know what's being said, or does it just flow through?
It flows through. I am aware that it's happening, but I don't remember everything that's said.
Okay. Well, it was terrific and super helpful to the audience and also to myself, because I found so much of it I could relate to personally, and I'm sure that was by design. So just absolutely fantastic. The name of the new book is The Art of Relationships. It's about all different types of relationships. It's not just the traditional relationships and romantic, whatever, but a great book. I really enjoyed reading it because there was so much dialogue in it between Theo and different folks in the book. And you do such wonderful work, the two of you. And I'm so pleased and honored that you're on the show. I hope you'll come back. So please tell everybody where they can find out more about you, and then we'll wrap it up.
They can find us at asktheo.com. Asktheo.com. We have some wonderful audio gifts, guided meditation, podcasts that we share for as our gift to people when they come in. And then they can also learn, Robert, a lot more about the soul integration process, this path to wholeness that Theo was talking about. Well, I also want to say to you, thank you for the work you're doing in elevating this conversation for men and between men and women. It's much needed, and you're doing a wonderful job. We appreciate it.
Oh, well, my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, Sheila, so much. I really appreciate it. And great to meet you too. And I hope we can do it again. And thank you,
We'd
Theo.
love to do it again. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
If you enjoy the guests and content I bring you each and every week on Guys Radio and TV, please support us by subscribing to our channels. Thanks.